Welcome friends! Today I'm going to be sewing a skirt and a matching mask. Now it's not just any matching skirt and mask combo, they are going to be made to suit a very specific aesthetic. I am of course talking about dark academia. Now I might be a little bit behind on this trend, but if you have been on the internet in the past year and a half, I think, you will have seen that there are a bunch of named aesthetics out there now that, as far as I know, did not used to exist. At least the names weren't there. It used to just be like goth, preppy, emo if you're like me, back in, 2007 or whatever. So I only found out that this style had a name in the year of our dumpster fire, 2020, and I was super excited about it. Not 2020, I was not excited about 2020. But I was excited that the way I had been dressing for a long time actually had a searchable name. It always had taken a lot of mishmashing to make my wardrobe goals happen. So in the spirit of spooky libraries everywhere, let's go make a skirt. Today I'm going to be using a vintage reproduction pattern, Simplicity 8747, which is from the 1950s. The cut of the skirt looks very stylish and comfortable, and combined with this brushed cotton houndstooth, it should be very cozy. So I'm going to put together a mock-up and go from there. So the first thing I started with was to make a mock-up. I did not film this because it's not the most fun process sometimes. The first thing I needed to do was to determine if the pattern was going to fit me as is, which the answer was no. I ended up needing to add about 2 inches total to the waist of the skirt. I did this by increasing the waistband by 2 inches. That's always the easy part. And then I needed to increase the width of a couple of the pattern pieces. I decided not to do it on this piece, which is piece 17, which is actually technically the godets. There were 2 of them, and because of the fact that those seams were very curved and nipped in so much in the back, I decided that that was not going to be the prime place to make any adjustments. So what I ended up doing was increasing the skirt width on the flat part of the center front, which is this piece, so 16. So I expanded this out by a 1/2 inch on each piece because there's 2 of them. And then I also did the same thing on piece 18, except I did not do it in the center because it has on the center, like the closest part to here, there's darts, and then there's also this fun little flappy extension guy. So I expanded this seam out by a 1/2 inch on each piece. It worked out pretty well in the end, which is great. Sometimes it doesn't. After I confirmed that the skirt was going to fit with these adjustments made with a little bit of measuring, I went ahead and pre-washed and ironed my fabric. I'm not going to show it washing because that's boring, but I did iron it. And then it was time to cut it out. If you've ever sewn a skirt before, you'll know that one of the first things that you usually have to do is to stitch the long seams of the skirt. And so in this case, it was stitching the center back pieces, which were piece 17, and those were the 2 godet pieces. Basically, they're very narrow at the top, and then they flare out at the bottom, giving the skirt this really nice swishy back. So the next thing I had to do was to put the darts into the skirt back. So I basted these together using a ladder stitch so that I could just pull the thread and then it would just come together in the middle, which worked really nicely. So then I stitched up those darts and pulled out my basting threads. After that, I pressed the seams towards the center back as instructed, and then I stitched the 2 back pieces to the center back piece. At this point, it was time to attach the 2 front pieces together, which I did. It's just a nice straight center seam. It turns out, unfortunately, that one of my pieces did end up slightly longer than the other during cutting. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I'm guessing I just wasn't super careful. So I stitched the center seam of the front together, then I attached the front piece of the skirt to the back pieces. I made sure to leave some of these side seams unsewn on one side for the zipper. It was supposed to be the left side, but I accidentally made it the right side because things happen. And then I also left a little bit open on the other side of the skirt, which was supposed to be the part with the zipper, but actually ended up being the part with the pocket. Because I decided I needed the skirt to have a pocket. I've noticed that on some of these retro and vintage patterns, retro and reproduction vintage patterns, I should say, that they do not include pockets. I don't know why. It's very strange. I don't know if pockets just weren't a thing. Let me know in the comments if you know. So I took this really fun Constellation quilting cotton that I had in my stash, and I pinned those into the skirt and stitched them in. Next, and oh so fun, was the zipper. I did not enjoy doing the zipper, believe me. So this was my first time dealing with an invisible zipper. It's mostly invisible. I did not enjoy this part at all. It kind of sucked. You're supposed to have a really specific foot for this, which I do not own. So I made the executive decision to hand stitch it in, and I'm really glad that I did because it did not take very long in the end. It was just kind of a pain getting it to line up correctly and make sure that it wouldn't be super visible once I finished that seam. After that, I put my interfacing in the waistband, which actually was the mock-up fabric waistband, because I don't really love using like synthetic interfacing, so I just used muslin instead. So I basted those 2 pieces together, and then I lined up my waistband piece with the skirt, pinned it in, and stitched it down. Once that was done, I stitched the ends of the waistband so that I could flip them right side out and they would form a nice little tab, and then the top of the other side of the waistband. And then I pinned the inside of the waistband down. After pinning, I hand stitched it because I don't really like doing this part with a machine personally. I like doing it invisibly, and also it's really relaxing just hand stitching waistbands. I don't know why, I really enjoy it. After that, I attached my hook and bar closure. I decided to not use a hook and eye because on my last skirt I used a hook and eye and it was a little too wiggly, like it shifted a little bit when it was on. So I decided to use a hook and bar this time. And after that, it was time to hem the skirt. Okay, so I'm treating my center front seam a little bit different as far as finishing the interior because I want it to lay nice and flat since it's on the front. So what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to turn each side in like this after pressing it open and fell it down like that. And it should be fairly flat and smooth. and it's nice and invisible from the outside. So my hem is a little uneven piece to piece, this piece in particular, which I believe is one of the front pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take whatever the shorter side is, turn the whole thing up by a ½ inch, and then turn it again by a ½ inch. And I'm going to do that all the way around, and because most of the pieces are the same length, it will actually end up evening out, because only the ones that are like off, which I think is just this one, will get folded up, and then I'll see how much that ends up actually being, and then fold this one slightly differently. I'm actually going to do this much in the way that I did my last one, which is fold in each of the seams first. So fold here and then there, and then I'll actually be finishing this later by turning it and cutting this side and then folding this one over it and then felling that down. So I'm actually going to prep it for that by cutting this side down. And this should be going towards the back of the skirt. Yep, it is. So we'll just trim this now. So I'll take this section, find the center. So we're going to measure between these 2 pins, which is 16.5 inches. So half of 16 is 8, so it's going to be 8.25 inches in. So right here, and I'm going to go around the entire thing just like this. And just subdividing each section, except for that one that was like consistently too long. That one I'm gonna have to find what the length of it needs to be to match everything else. Okay, so I'm going to do the mask next. This is my pattern. It's just one piece. You do the exterior fabric with this part, and then you fold this back, and this is the lining part. And that's basically it. So I'm going to make this with the same cotton that I used for the skirt. It's extremely thick and fuzzy, and then the lining is going to be this black quilting cotton. So normally what I would do is, especially since the news has come out that 2 masks are actually more effective, which makes sense, Normally what I would do is I would actually interface this with a piece of non-woven interfacing. However, because this cotton is so thick, I'm actually not going to put that third layer. So this is not a medical mask. I just want to put that out there. This is not for anything other than personal use. And I make no statements regarding the efficacy of it. It's recommended when making these masks that you do use 3 layers. As I said, this one is so thick that I'm foregoing that. I also only plan on wearing this outdoors when I am not indoors with other humans. And we'll cut 2 of these and 2 of the black lining fabric. Alright, so we've got 2 nice matchy little mask pieces. Okay, so I have all 4 of my mask pieces here, and I am just about ready to stitch them together. The way that I make my masks, I create basically a casing and then just have a tube or a piece of elastic that goes through, and I'll show that afterwards. You do not press your seams open because that can actually create a hole that, well, basically anything could get through. So you actually want to press your seam allowance to one side. Look at that. That is some primo pattern matching, if I do say so myself. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to stitch these together with the inside and the outside together. So technically the right sides together. So you're going to fold this down so that the raw edge gets encased, and then you fold this to about, yeah, it's about 5/8. So we're just going to stitch this down. Nice and clean. And I will do the other side and then show you the elastics. All of my masks are made the same way. They have a little sleeve on each side where this can go. So you just take the end, you shove it on through from the top. So you start at the top, shove it on through, and then you take that cord, and you go from the bottom on the other side, you shove it up through here, and you put your toggle back on, and voila, you have an adjustable mask. Wow, that makes me look pale. Ooh. Okay, so that is my dark academia skirt. I'm really happy with how this skirt turned out. It is in fact a winter skirt. It's very cozy to the point where I have to wear a short sleeve shirt with it when I'm indoors, which is fine. I'm really happy with how the skirt and the mask both turned out. So one interesting thing about this skirt is it was a 1950s vintage reproduction pattern, but the fullness in the back almost makes me think of a walking skirt, which is totally fine with me. So if you want to follow along and watch me make more things like this and the skirt, then go ahead and subscribe. I am here all week, just kidding. And I will see you next time. Bye.